the platforms do remain free to take a call whether to remove this content or to do something about it. Of course, beyond a point, the platform will then also be accountable if they do not take the action.
Hi, I'm Jhalak,
Hi, I'm Shashank.
and welcome to the CCG Tech Podcast.
Today we're speaking to Rakesh Maheshwari, who's a former government officer having worked for more than 35 years at the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. Rakesh sir retired as Senior Director and Group Coordinator, Cyber Law and Data Governance at MeitY. He is an engineer in Electronics and Communication by qualification from the Delhi College of Engineering. Recently, the Government of India amended rules under the IT Act to introduce a requirement that encourages services like YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram take down misinformation related to the government. Under these rules, a fact checking unit will be established for flagging such misinformation. Rules under the IT Act give wide powers to the government to ask internet services to take down unlawful content. Amendment adds to this power by allowing the government to ask providers to also take down misinformation. This amendment was recently challenged before the Bombay High Court, and we are currently awaiting judgment. In today's episode, we will be talking to Rakesh Maheshwari on the amendment and the challenge before the Bombay High Court.
Thank you for joining us today on the CCG podcast, sir. In the context of the fact-checking amendment that was brought to the information technology rules earlier this year, I was wondering if you could give our listeners a background of why this amendment was brought in, and before this, has there been any fact-checking that was previously being done by the government, say by the Press Information Bureau? And how does this amendment shift from what was already being done?
So I'll just like to mention that in the age of internet itself has become main source of news and information for many customers and users worldwide. In fact, particularly the new generation, I find that they try to consume the news maybe through messaging platforms, through social media websites, and otherwise on various platforms available through internet. And because unlike publishers who are responsible in their behavior and their approach, when it comes to the contents being uploaded by the users, there is always a possibility of certain fake news becoming available and getting shared with the users. This fake news identification is becoming more and more difficult. In fact, fake news itself has become an industry in many scenarios, where individuals are paid to write fake news, write sensational stories, create clickbait content to increase the site traffic. And the fact also is that anything which is glamour, anything which is misinformation is also a glamour. And it travels much faster, it reaches much faster to the users, and thereby it causes damage. From the government perspective, while the 2021 intermediary rules, to be called as the IT Intermediary Guidelines and Digital Media Ethics Code 2021, an effort was made in the due diligence section of the rules that it is the responsibility of the platforms to educate their users that misinformation and disinformation, or something which is impersonating, or something which is likely to be harmful, that the users are conveyed through the terms conditions that they should not really upload or maybe forward such kind of messages. Now, in the COVID period, the government also realized that this problem escalated a lot. Post-COVID also, in fact, during COVID, government also came up with the Press Information Bureau Fact Check Unit, which was created in November 2019, but continued to work and of course is working even today with respect to certain news items which relate to functioning of the government, orders of the government, or certain decisions being taken by the government. Per se, this unit was already functional, and time to time they had been conveying the difference as to what exactly, what is being circulated in the platforms and whether it is true or whether it is false. So per se, the job was already being done. The social media platforms, because of the IT rules 2021, as well as because of their own initiatives of curbing such misinformation, they were and they are also using services of various fact check units, which because the social media happens to be working in multi jurisdictions, most of the bigger ones. Therefore, they utilize the services of IFC and fact check units. But still, most of these fact checkers which are available with these social media platforms are still giving facts or analyzing such suspicious news items in respect of what is happening abroad, or maybe they have a skew towards the English, in favor of English. And to that an extent, a large population of the country using the Indian languages, vernacular languages, actually does not really get the services of the fact checking in whatever is getting circulated. And it is precisely this point which prompted government to look into this aspect of the growing menace of fake news and deep fakes as to how it should be handled. While of course government did reach out to the social media platforms to do a bit more, government also has its own responsibility, particularly in respect of the content which is generated or which is of the government or which is likely to impact the government functioning. And it is precisely this particular point which led to the inclusion of government being also considered as the fact-checking, government's fact-checking unit is also being considered as the authentic source of what is considered as right information or the fake news. And government therefore should be able to reach out to the online intermediaries to convey and to ask for an appropriate action, mostly or many times in terms of removal of this content.
So, as you rightly summarized the problem of misinformation online, my next question emanates from the recently concluded hearings before the Bombay High Court, where this question came up that, why this distinction between government-related fake news, as you're saying, and generally the other kinds of fake news that are circulating online as well.
Fact remains that given the size of internet, the extent of its reach, amount of content which is posted and gets circulated becomes viral, you have all varieties of contents available. The government, from its perspective, did convey to the platform that platforms which are in the nature of primarily the content hosting platforms should take due measures to ensure that such misinformation, fake news, information which is misleading about the origin of the user, or various other harmful or unlawful material is not available or is detected and is removed from the platforms. And for that reason, platforms are free. After all, they also need to maintain their credibility of their own, I'll say, the activities that are happening on their platform. As I mentioned, certain activities, unfortunately, government itself is private too. And I can give specific examples that post General Rawat's unfortunate death, there were news circulating that the cabinet has taken a call that now onwards, Sikhs will not be recruited in the army. Now, this is something which only the cabinet of the ministers know, and hence only government can know whether this information is authentic or otherwise. then there are sometimes information. For example, Prime Minister has launched Ujjwala gas scheme and is giving some subsidy to the people. So maybe it is a fact, maybe it's not a fact. In the context, the way a particular information is being provided. And what really happens is, in most of these scenarios, the intent of spreading fake news is to maybe induce people to somehow click to a particular link, which can be malicious in nature, or maybe ask them to register or pay certain minimal amount, which normally will therefore not catch the eyes of the law enforcement agencies, but together it makes a huge sum. And it is the government which gets a bad name. It is the people who suffer because of whatever misinformation is there. We have seen, for example, during Holi and Diwali time, that a letter signed by Honorable Prime Minister gets circulated that मैं नरेंद्र मोदी ये आप लोगों से अपील करता हूं कि आप चाइनीज माल ना खरीदें. Now, if this statement has never been made by the Honorable Prime Minister, naturally, once again, it's the government, it's the PMO, it's Ministry of External Affairs, or maybe Ministry of Concerned Affairs will be the most appropriate government, will be the most appropriate agency to know whether this is authentic or not. There are still many more instances. For example, during CAA movement, during COVID times, once again, lots of such misinformation regarding maybe Jawans getting killed, or maybe Jawans shooting the people, or so in some such cases where rehearsal was going on, a mock drill was taking place, maybe it took place 2-3 years back, which is being projected as if something unfortunate incident has happened, or some public order problem has happened. And once again, as I mentioned, that such kind of information travels much faster than the normal information. And it is precisely at these points. In fact, we had the instance in the ministry where some letter got viral, was not signed by us. There was nobody like that. There was one more instance where my own letter, which I issued in terms of a particular category of virus, which was spreading during the COVID period, wherein it was being called as it is the Indian variant. And there is nothing called as Indian variant. Lots of people approached me also, whether this letter was issued by me or not. So it is in these scenarios that it is the government which knows the best about what is fact or otherwise. But beyond this, and this is where precisely the government did want to put formally the role of fact-check unit, which works in a completely objective manner and brings out these facts, puts it to the concerned intermediary, and the fact also remains. Please understand, I mean, given the size of the nature, I mean, the nature of the problem, the government will not be able to get to know, I mean, where exactly this material is spreading. They will, or whatever has come to their knowledge is what will be pointed out by them. And we thereafter leave it to the platform to take a call on what has been presented by the government as the fake news, or maybe even the truth, because it's not all the time fake news. It is sometimes being conveyed that this is truth. This is the right information which has been circulating. Government, from its perspective, does its job. It is for the platforms to take a call. And by the way, in this particular scenario, it is also very clear that the platforms do remain free to take a call whether to remove this content or to do something about it. Of course, beyond a point, the platform will then also be accountable if they do not take the action. This decision of accountability will not be decided by the government, but by the judiciary in case government decides to approach the judiciary. So it's a proactive action in terms of weeding out of misinformation to the extent it belongs to the government. And as I mentioned earlier also, that this is not the only initiative or the initiative which will be sufficient enough. The platforms themselves also need to take initiatives, support the languages in terms of support the fact-checking units in all those languages. The platforms themselves do support, and per se, there is no prohibition of such additional fact-check units to be used by the social media or other online intermediaries.
So this amendment deals with fake, false, and misleading information. When we are talking about content on social media platforms that is dealing with government-related news information, very often a lot of that information will also feed into the political discourse of our country, right? Many of those issues are sort of key issues that get debated in the lead up to elections as part of debates between political parties. Now, the question arises is, where do you draw the line between what is fake or false fact versus where something becomes opinion, satire, artistic expression for an individual who is part of, the Indian polity?
So I'll just like to mention that, for example, as of today, it's only the PIB fact check unit which is in operation. And therefore, we can only rely on facts and figures which are available with PIB in terms of what kind of material has been taken up by them, what kind of requests do they receive. As far as my knowledge is concerned, there were, till about 3 months back, around 40,000 requests since inception of this unit, which were received by them. And as you have rightly said, not everything is worth to be evaluated, because there is a lot of, I'll say, that in many scenarios, there is a political angle. There, sometimes it's just an opinion, and therefore there are only very few cases which are worthy to be considered whether they should be evaluated in terms of they being fact or otherwise. And it is precisely for that reason that PIB, for that reason, has been able to fact check and evaluate only in respect of 1,300 cases, wherein they have therefore given their opinion, and rest everything goes, practically either unreported or maybe action not taken. And simultaneously, it is equally important. See, any fact check unit for that reason, whether in India or outside India, works on certain principles based on certain facts and figures available with them. And because the government has, and PIB has access to all the government departments, they have created a nodal officer in each of the ministries and state governments. Therefore, they will always have an access to what is authentic information. And it's not about political news or political speeches. It's never done on that basis. It's always about certain contents, maybe where the truth can always be evaluated and is evaluated by them. And if you look at those examples, all of which are available at PIB fact check site, you can easily get to know that were they doing their job right or not. One, was there any, say for example, political agenda in it or not? And I believe you will be happy to note that in all these 1,200, 1,300 cases, you will find that they are all about maybe relating to misinformation being spread on internet, relating to government programs only. And I don't think any one of them will have a political tone or overtone in it. So somehow people believe as if this is a tool in the hands of government for censorship. Unfortunately, this is a misconception, we are also, the government also is not really wanting to block or censor, because there are separate rules for that, the online news publishers as well. So apprehension of an individual, apprehension of an online news platform are, in my view, wrongly founded. In any case, if a wrong decision for some reason is taken, it's not that, everybody is like 100% correct. Certain decisions may go wrong. Sometimes in the absence of maybe authentic information becoming available, necessity to decide on a certain piece of information faster because of the various, obvious reasons in the sense that things go viral and things have a potential to create problem in the society or at the country level. Therefore, if things go wrong, in any case, the fact check unit is to give its input to the platform. Platform has to take the final call. 2, if some injustice gets done or gets happened with the individual, then the government, in its amendment of 2022, also constituted a grievance appellate committee, which is available as an online, which works through an online portal, gac.gov.in, operational since March 2023, and any grievance for that reason, the individual first, of course, can approach the platform and can later on approach the grievance appellate committee, and still remains dissatisfied. The courts are always there to take the final call. So it's not that the government has taken a call and it is final and it's done. No.
So thanks for that. My question is, so the distinction between the fake news amendment that the government has brought in and the related power of the government to request platforms to take down unlawful content, which then, they will have to act upon. So what is your perspective on that?
So I will request the users to understand the difference between what is a fake news, misleading news, misinformation versus an unlawful information. I'll start with the unlawful information first. For example, let's say banned drug. In fact, drugs cannot be sold on social media platforms. So if an ad with respect to social drugs being sold, e-commerce platform which is selling, for example, weapons, piece of information which is about cruelty to the animals and therefore violate some law relating to cruelty to the animals, some unlawful routers being sold, some pornographic stuff, child sexual stuff being made available, which are all considered illegal in the eyes of the law. And therefore, there is always a law which is being broken or under which that particular information or content has become unlawful. And there is always an authority responsible to oversee such information, maybe in the physical world, is what, as government, as appropriate agency, as appropriate government, that you are approaching to the platform, conveying its removal. Because it is unlawful, there is always a penalty, financial or criminal, associated with it. So while the platforms in the beginning are given immunity, the Honorable Supreme Court in Shra Singhal case had conveyed that it is the responsibility of the platforms that when the government brings it to the knowledge that something unlawful is happening, platforms need to act, failing which they become liable. In respect of the fake news, it is not about a law being broken. For example, I give few examples again. Maybe आर्मी की भर्ती की रैली अब अगले साल होगी कि प्रधानमंत्री जी ने ये लेटर इशू किया है कि इस मिनिस्ट्री में अभी रिक्रूटमेंट चालू हो गया है और ये लिंक है, या गलवान वैली में कुछ सोल्जर्स, इंडियन सोल्जर्स की डेथ हो गई है, या सरकार पीछे हट गई है या सरकार ने एक्सेशन कर लिया है. Now all these things per se need not be unlawful, but are definitely misleading, fake, misinformation, or if intentionally created, can be categorized as disinformation. Now, because it does impact the minds of people in terms of their behavior, therefore, it is utmost important that even such issues are brought to the knowledge of the platform. The individuals can bring it to the knowledge. Sometimes they are not really aware. The government has the responsibility to bring such things to the knowledge. These can be considered as harmful, not unlawful. So such harmful material brought to the knowledge of the platform is expected to act, but maybe by virtue of removal, maybe by virtue of putting a suitable label that this information is not correct, or maybe de-index it, or lowers its priority so that this information is not easily available on internet. Government is making a request by virtue of doing its job right, doing a thorough fact check and approaching the platform. In itself, this does not create a liability for the platform even if they don't act on it.
That's very useful, sir. And just to clarify, you're drawing a distinction between unlawful information and misleading information.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is, in the cases of unlawful information, the government can request, as per law, for a takedown of content. And as per misleading information, the government will nudge platforms to positively act upon it, which includes adding a disclaimer or adding certain words that they feel they need to target, or as you said, deprioritizing the content when searched for. Okay,
Yeah.
that's very helpful, sir.
So the challenge of misinformation that we've been talking about in this podcast can be tackled by many different mechanisms. Over the last several minutes, we've been talking about fact checking as one of the mechanisms to tackle misinformation. But if we're thinking about creating a reliable and credible information environment for citizens to access, what do you think are some of the other tools and mechanisms to tackle the challenge of misinformation? And perhaps, we can talk about it also by stakeholder category. Maybe there are certain things that platforms can be doing. Perhaps there are certain things that citizen groups can be doing. Perhaps there are certain things that need to be more targeted towards the user, whether it's digital literacy. Perhaps civil society organizations need to play a particular role. Media organizations need to play a particular role. Would really love your thoughts on what are the complementary tools that need to be given impetus to create a credible information environment.
Yeah, so technology will definitely play an important role. And particularly today, when we are talking of artificial intelligence and ability of artificial intelligence tools to detect what an original picture versus what a morph picture is, the platforms therefore have to use the AI technologies to the best advantage of detecting the real versus the fake, particularly when certain things have been faked or deep fake is being used. In many other scenarios, there can be, for example, usage of or issues or messages or posts being flagged by trusted flaggers. So most of these, particularly social media platforms, have this concept of trusted flaggers. They are the individuals, organizations specifically trained to maybe identify something going wrong in whatever area of their expertise is. And because they are trusted flaggers, they are acted upon on priority by the platforms. And definitely their information or piece of information will be, or maybe recommended action will be quite likely accepted by the platform. But once again, platform is the final arbiter. Then, of course, empanelment of the fact-checking units covering all areas of the information and all languages which the platform supports. And even if the platform doesn't support, the beauty is when it's an audio or video, it does not go by what the language is being supported by the platform. To that an extent, at least in my opinion, any significant social media platform particularly should have empanelment of fact-checking units covering most of the Indian languages, preferably all the Indian languages which are there on the platform. After all, they are making money out of it. So they need to invest in processes, they need to invest in technology, they need to invest in capacity building. And of course, they will also get to know, because there is a grievance mechanism that, a particular user, if it is approaching to the platform time and again, so whether this user turns out to be true or user turns out to be false on most of the occasions. So credibility and therefore a lot of analytics can also be done by the platform. And this is something which is an ongoing issue, will continue to be an evolving issue. So that is something which the platforms need to do. Of course, at the government level, in addition to whatever fact-checking unit government has proposed or may propose, government should also encourage, maybe develop a scheme for having our own fact-checkers in the country. So develop an institutional mechanism of fact-checking in the country. After all, we cannot be just dependent on what the IFCN or whatever is the external and international system is. We can always have our own system of creating the fact-checking units in the country. They need to be, of course, financially supported also in many scenarios. Then, of course, also a lot of it has to go in terms of education, formal, informal, both. So capacity building, awareness creation, particularly at the children level. I know there are countries which do invest a lot in terms of education of children, conveying as to what is false and what is true, or what is misinformation, what is disinformation. In many of the because of the geopolitical reasons or otherwise, these countries have invested. And this is what precisely, maybe within the schools, such kind of activities through the NGOs in an informal way, reaching out to the people, also needs to be taken up. So sum total is that everybody in the game, whether it is platform, whether it is government, whether it is civil society, whether it is educational institution, whether it is NGOs, everybody has to be involved in making this effort to see that such misinformation, misleading information is curbed. Of course, platforms do provide, for example, a reporting button as of today, particularly messaging platforms, even the video platforms, all social media platforms, I believe, do provide a very easy to report kind of things. So it's a matter of creating user awareness that these features are available and should be utilized, instead of believing whatever is being served on the social media platform.
Thanks for that, sir. And I want to ask one of the final questions, zooming out a bit. Leveraging your rich experience and in the perspective that India is currently drafting the Digital India Act, which is going to be the next generation of internet laws in India. So, what according to you is one very crucial thing to keep in mind for students of law and policy, for people who are looking at this development very closely? What will be one important thing for all of us to keep in mind as we observe this process?
So see, in the internet world, speed of decision making is the crux. And particularly because whatever it is, content will continue to be there. Misleading content, misinformation, disinformation, all will be there. Approaching to the courts, though a rightful solution, may not work most of the time because of the inherent delays and the way that this particular process works. What we really require is a faster adjudication mechanism. We need to have maybe ombudsman, we need to have maybe adjudicators, independent, knowledgeable, reasonably knowledgeable, empowered under the law, who can be approached by a citizen maybe through online platforms, offline platforms, but are mandated to take decisions much faster. That's what will build the confidence. As of today, I mean, we do have the adjudication system in the IT Act, but unfortunately, the existing IT secretaries already loaded with their work, and IT may not be the only portfolio that they are dealing with. And to that an extent, the adjudication mechanism has not really worked. So we want a faster adjudication system, easily available adjudication system, not only with respect to maybe adjudicating and giving penalties in terms of financial penalties, but in terms of content as well. Taking call in terms of content need not be unlawful, can just be harmful. So some sort of a regulator, some sort of a system in place, easily accessible to take care of the unlawful and the harmful content available on internet. And this particularly can be a very good safety feature also, particularly for women and child.
Thank you so much, sir. That has been such an enriching conversation for us. And I would really like to express our gratitude for you taking out the time to record this with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Shashank ji. Thank you, Madam ji.
Thank you so much for sharing your rich expertise with us. It's been a pleasure speaking.
We would love to hear your thoughts on the episode and your suggestions on what topics you would like us to cover. You can reach out to us through email or find us on our social media. We will link the details of these in the show notes. Lastly, we would like to thank National Law University Delhi and the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom for their support in creating the podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, please like and subscribe wherever you're listening to the podcast. We look forward to bringing you more content. This podcast is created by Center for Communication Governance at National Law University Delhi. This episode was edited by Gopika.